Yes, indeed. My sister Martha and I have been talking all week about your sermon last Sunday. It's really wonderful, Dr. Harper. In only 2 short years, you've taken on the spirit of Brooklyn.
Oh, that's very gratifying,
You
Miss
see,
Brewster.
living here next to the church all our lives, we've seen many ministers come and go. The spirit of Brooklyn, we always say, is friendliness. And your sermons are not so much sermons as friendly talks.
Personally, I've always enjoyed my talks with Cardinal Gibbons. Well, have I met him yet?
No, not yet, dear. Oh, the biscuit's cooked.
Bully!
Have another biscuit, Dr. Harper.
Oh, no, thank you. I'll have no appetite for dinner. I always eat too many of your biscuits just so I can enjoy some more of your lovely jam.
You haven't tried the quince. We always put a little apple in with it to take the tartness out.
Oh, no, thank you.
We'll send over a jar.
No. Keep it here. That way I can enjoy it with your biscuits.
I do hope they don't make us use that imitation flour again. I mean, with this war trouble. It may not be very charitable of me, but I've almost come to the conclusion that this Mr. Hitler is not a Christian.
How I wish Europe were on another planet.
Europe, sir?
Yes, Teddy.
Point your gun the other way!
Teddy.
To the west. There's your danger. There's your enemy. Japan!
Oh, yes, of course.
Teddy!
No, Aunt Abby. No more talk about Europe and more about the canal.
Let's not talk about war. Will you have another cup of tea, dear?
No, thank you, Aunt Abby.
Dr. Harper.
No, thank you. I must say the problems of war and violence seem far removed from these surroundings.
It is peaceful here, isn't it?
Yes, peaceful. The virtues of another day, they're all here in this house. The gentle virtues that went out with candlelight and good manners and no taxes.
It's one of the oldest houses in Brooklyn. It's just as it was when Grandfather Brewster built and furnished it. Except for the electricity, which we hardly ever use. It was Mortimer who persuaded us to put it in.
Yes, your nephew Mortimer always seems to live only for electric light.
Yes, to work so late, so poor dear. I understand it's ELAINE he's taking with him to the theater again tonight. Teddy, your brother Mortimer will be here a little later.
Delighted!
We're so happy it's ELAINE Mortimer takes with him to the theater.
Well, I must say, it's a new experience for me, waiting up until 3 in the morning for my daughter to be brought home.
Dr. Harper, I hope you don't disapprove of Mortimer.
Well,
We'd feel so guilty if you did, Sister Martha and I. I mean, after all, it was here in our home that your daughter met Mortimer.
Yes, of course, and please let me state, for the record, that I consider your nephew to be a worthy gentleman. But I must admit I have been following the increasing intimacy between him and my daughter with some trepidation, and for one reason, Miss Abby.
His stomach, Dr. Harper.
Stomach?
His dyspepsia. He's bothered with it so.
No. I'll be frank with you, Miss Abby. It's his continuing involvement with the theater.
The theater? Oh, no, Dr. Harper. Mortimer writes for a New York newspaper.
Yes, I know that, but a dramatic critic is in constant contact with the theater. And I've no doubt that some of them develop an interest in it.
Oh, not Mortimer. You need have no fear of that. Mortimer hates the theater.
Really?
Oh, yes. He writes awful things about the theater, but you can't blame him, poor boy. After all, he was so happy writing about real estate, which he really knew something about, and then they just made him take this terrible night position.
My.
Yes, but as he always says, the theater can't last much longer. In the meantime, it's a living. I think if we give the theater another year or two, perhaps.
Oh.
You suppose that could be? No, thank you, Teddy. I'll go. Oh, come in, Mr. Brooklyn.
Hello, Miss Brewster.
How are you, Mr. Klein?
Oh, very well, Miss Brewster.
What news have you brought me?
Colonel, we have nothing to report.
Thank you, gentlemen. Splendid! At ease!
You know Dr. Harper.
Oh, sure. How you doing, Dr. Harper? We just come for the toys for the Christmas fund.
Oh, yes.
That is splendid work you gentlemen do, fixing up discarded toys so that poor children can have a happier Christmas.
Well, it gives us something to do down at the station. You get tired of playing cards, and after a while you start cleaning your gun, and the next thing you know, shot yourself in the foot.
Teddy, go upstairs and get that big box out of your Aunt Martha's room. How is Mrs. Brophy today? Mrs. Brophy's been quite ill, Dr. Harper.
Pneumonia. I'm sorry to hear that.
She's a little better now. Still a little weak still.
I'm going to get you some beef broth to take to her.
Oh, don't bother, Miss Abby. You've done so much for her already.
We made it this morning. Sister Martha is taking some to poor Mr. Daninsky right now. It'll just take a minute. Now sit down, be comfortable, all of you.
She shouldn't go through all that trouble.
Listen, try and stop her or her sister from doing something nice, and for nothing. They don't even care how you vote.
When I first came to Brooklyn and I moved in next door, my wife was unwell. When she died, and for months before, well, if I know what pure kindness and absolute generosity are, because I've known the Brewster sisters.
Colonel, I told you not to do that.
But I have to call a cabinet meeting to get the release of those supplies!
He used to do that in the middle of the night. The neighbors raised Cain with us. They're a little afraid of him anyways.
Oh, he's harmless.
So what if he thinks he's Teddy Roosevelt? Look, there are worse people he can think he was.
Damn shame, a nice family like this hatching a cuckoo.
Well, their father, that's the old girl's brother, seems to me he was some kind of a genius, wasn't he? And their father, that's Teddy's grandfather, seems to me he was a little crazy too.
Yeah, he was crazy like a fox. He made $1 million.
Really? Here in Brooklyn?
Yeah, out of medicine. He was some quack of some sort. Old Sergeant Edwards remembers him. Said he used the house here as some sort of clinic. Tried it out on people.
Yeah, made a lot of unfortunate mistakes too.
Yeah, the department never bothered him much because he was pretty useful on autopsies sometimes, especially for poison cases.
Yeah, well, whatever he did, he left his daughters well fixed for life. Thank God for that.
Yeah, not like they ever do anything for themselves.
Oh, I'm well familiar with their charities.
Well, you don't look exactly. When I was with the Missing Persons Bureau, I tried to trace an old man that we never did find. Hey, you know that there's a rental agency that has this place down on its list for furnished rooms? They don't rent rooms. But you can bet that anyone that comes here looking for a room is going to go away with a nice meal and probably a few dollars in their kick.
Yeah, it's just a way of doing some good too.
Well, that's nice.
Good afternoon, Miss Brewster.
How do you do, Mr. Brophy? Dr. Harper, Mr.
How you
Clyde.
doing, Miss Brewster? We just dropped in to pick up the Christmas gifts?
Oh, yes, Teddy's Army Navy. Woo-hoo, they wear out. They're all packed.
The colonel's upstairs after them. He says the cabinet has to okay it.
Yes, of course. How is Mrs. Brophy?
She's doing better, ma'am. Your sister's actually getting some soup for me to take to her.
Oh, yes, we made it this morning. I just took some to a poor man who broke ever so many bones.
Oh, Martha, you're back. How's Mr. Daninsky?
Well, dear, it's pretty serious, I'm afraid. The doctor was there. He's going to amputate in the morning.
Can we be present?
No. I asked him, but he said it's against the rules of the hospital.
I knew you couldn't be of any service anyway, and you must spare yourself something.
Here's the broth, Mr. Brophy. Now be sure it's good and hot.
Thank you, Miss Brewster.
Oh, this will do just fine. You're gonna make a lot of kids happy. Oh, that O'Malley boy, he's just nuts about soldiers.
That's General Miles. I've retired him. And what's this? The organ?
Teddy, dear, put them back.
No, the organ goes to Australia.
Now, Teddy.
No, I've given my word to Fighting Bob Evans.
But Teddy.
What difference who gets it? Bobby Evans, Izzy Cohen? We'll be on our way, ma'am, and thank you very much.
Not at all. Goodbye.
Oh, I better be moving along.
Charge! Charge the blockhouse!
Oh, before you go, Dr. Harper.
The blockhouse?
The stairs always have one hill.
considered persuading Teddy that he's not Teddy Roosevelt?
Oh, no, he's so happy being Teddy Roosevelt.
Once, a long time ago, remember, Martha? We thought if he would be George Washington, it would be a change for him.
But he stayed under his bed for days and just wouldn't be anybody.
And we'd so much rather be Mr. Roosevelt than nobody.
Well, if he's happy. And more important, you're happy. You will see that he signs this.
What is this? Oh, Dr. Harper's made all arrangements for Teddy to go to Happydale Sanitarium after we pass on.
Why should Teddy sign any papers now?
Oh, it's better to have it all settled. If the Lord should take you two away suddenly, we might have trouble persuading Teddy to commit himself, and that could lead to an unpleasant legal situation. Mr. Witherspoon knows to keep these on file until they're needed.
Mr. Witherspoon, who's he?
He's the superintendent of Happydale.
Dr. Harper's arranged for him to drop in tomorrow or next day to meet Teddy.
Well, I'd better get moving, or Elaine will come here looking for me.
Give our love to Elaine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and Dr. Harper, try not to think harshly of Mortimer just because he's a dramatic critic. Somebody has to do those things.
Did you just have tea? Isn't it rather late?
Yes, and dinner's going to be late, too.
So why?
Teddy! Good news for you. You're going to Panama to dig another lock for the canal.
Delighted, that bully. Just bully! I shall prepare once for the journey.
While I was out?
Yes, dear. Well, I just couldn't wait for you. I didn't know when you'd be back, and Dr. Harper was coming.
But all by yourself.
Oh, fine.
We'll run downstairs and see.
No, dear, there wasn't time, and I was all alone.
Well,
Martha, just look in that window seat. Oh. It's Elaine! Come in, dear.
Good afternoon, Miss Abby. Good afternoon, Miss Martha. I thought Father was here.
he just this minute left. Didn't you meet him?
No, I took a shortcut to the cemetery. Mortimer hasn't arrived yet.
No, dear.
Oh, he asked me to meet him here. Do you mind if I wait?
Not at all.
You sit down, dear.
But we really must speak to Mortimer about doing this to you.
Doing what?
Well, he was brought up to know better than this. When a gentleman is taking a young lady out, he should call for her at her house.
Oh, there's something about calling for a girl at a parsonage that discourages any man who doesn't embroider.
Well, he's done this too often. We're going to speak to him.
Oh, no, please don't. After young men whose idea of nightlife was to take me to prayer meetings, it's wonderful to go to the theater almost every night of my life.
Well, it's comforting for us, too, because if Mortimer has to see some of those plays he has to see, at least he's sitting next to a minister's daughter.
Oh, goodness, Elaine, what must you think of us not having tea cleared by this time?
Now, don't do anything in the kitchen until Mortimer comes, and then I'll help you. Mortimer should be here every minute now.
Oh, yes. Father must have been surprised not to find me at home. I'd better run along and tell him good night.
Oh, it's a shame you missed him, dear.
If Mortimer comes, tell him I'll be right back. Oh, hello, Mortimer.
Hello, Elaine. And Martha.
Abby! Mortimer's here!
Were you going somewhere?
I was just going to tell Father not to wait up for me.
Oh, I had no idea that was being done in Brooklyn.
Hello, Mortimer.
Hello, Aunt Abby.
How are you, dear?
All right. You look well. You haven't changed much since yesterday.
Oh, my goodness, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Well, we've been seeing a lot more of you lately. Oh, come, sit down, sit down.
Abby, haven't we something to do in the kitchen? You know, the tea things.
The tea things! Yes, the tea things. Oh, well, you two just make yourselves at home.
Just make yourselves at home.
Well, can't you take a hint?
No, that was pretty obvious. A lack of inventiveness, I should say.
Yes, that's exactly what you'd say.
Where do you want to go for dinner?
I don't care, I'm not very hungry.
Well, I just had breakfast. Suppose we wait until after the show?
Well, that'll make it pretty late, won't it?
Not with the little stinker we're seeing tonight. From what I've heard about it, we have blanks by 10 o'clock.
You really ought to be fair to these plays.
Are these plays fair to me?
I've never seen you walk out on a musical.
That musical is an opening tonight.
No?
Darling, you're gonna have to learn the rules. For the musical, there are always 4 changes of title and 3 postponements. They liked it in New Haven, but it needs a lot of work.
Oh, I was hoping it was a musical.
Well, you have such a light mind.
Not at all. Musicals somehow have a humanizing effect on you. After a play, we join the proletariat in the subway and you lecture me on the drama. After a musical, you bring me home in a taxi and you make a few passes.
Now, darling, that's a very inaccurate piece of reporting.
Oh, I will admit, after the fair play, you told me I had authentic beauty. And that's a hell of a thing to say to a girl. It wasn't until after our first musical. You told me I had nice legs. And I do.